All right, let's go. All right, Tim, that game last night, you know what that was? That was like back in, well, I hate to say it, back in the 70s and 80s.
Big boy hockey.
That was big boy hockey.
Yeah.
The referees know. The
Right.
referees know. They know they shouldn't call those chintzy penalties.
Right. So this is Sunday morning. There was Dallas in Vegas, and boy, that was the game
last night, boy. And the referee, and there was no, if you don't like fighting, there was no fighting. There was no scrums after, like the whistle and stuff going on. It was just good hockey.
Yeah. Well, how many times have you and we used to go to a minor midget game, and if the referee was good and didn't call a lot of penalties, there wasn't a lot of stuff happening.
There wasn't anything.
And then if the referee starts calling a lot of penalties, that's when the game got out of hand.
Well, when they said, if I'm going to get a penalty, I might as well get a good one.
Right.
and there used to be some good ones. But referees, when they go up and talk to the guys, and they used to talk to the guys. I don't understand them going over to the benches, the referees. Anyhow, did I ever tell you that I did? Did I tell a story about Andy Van Daleman?
I'm not sure.
Well, about the time that he come over and he said, Don, I said, this guy's gone insane. And what he was mic'd. It was the first guy mic'd.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And he come over and he said, Don, I'd like you to stop. And
But you say, what are you talking to me for?
yeah, well, like why is he over here talking? Anyhow, I don't understand him going over and talking to the coaches. I'm glad they didn't when I was there.
Right. Well, I think the question, too, then, is if you're Rod Brindamore and you lose that fourth game on that chintzy tripping call,
yeah,
and then he looks and watches,
and then you watch the game last night.
You just wonder, because after I felt so sorry for him, because he's got to do his press conference right after, and like his eyes were going tilt, and he took the high road. He didn't say, "Are you kidding me? We lost." But the thing I couldn't get over was, I'm not going to mention who it was, but it was somebody on TV said, "Oh, who cares, that penalty? The Canes weren't going to win anyway."
Well, I tell you, they're on a mission.
So we'll get into Panthers and Canes in a minute, but you have an interesting stat, Dad.
You wrote it out for me, and I'd like to read it. The Panthers and the Las Vegas, I call them Las Vegas. The Panthers have 13 Canadians on the club.
Yep, 10 from Ontario.
10 from Ontario. Proof's in the pudding.
Yep.
And the Vegas has 16. So they have the most Canadians on the club of all the National Hockey League. For instance, I just say for instance, the Rangers have 3 Canadians on the club.
Yeah.
The Canes have 4. They have 16. Everybody's saying everything. When you're brought up, when you're like a little kid, and you go out on the ice, you're the Stanley Cup. Then you go on and play junior, Stanley Cup. I firmly believe that they give that extra shot. I really do.
Well, I do. I think that they're entrenched in the, as you would say, culture of watching Hockey Night in Canada, watching the guys skate around with the Stanley Cup. I mean, even PK Subban, when he retired, he mentioned you and Rock'em Sock'ems, and he says, I've spent my childhood watching Don Cherry's Rock'em Sock'em at the end of the players skating around with the cup all bruised and cut and
translucent. And what do they call them when they look so white? They translucent. I don't know if that's a word or not. But I used to call them translucent.
But that was his whole thing, and that's what he said. That's what he dreamt of the whole time. So
it was a terrific game, Tim. It really was a terrific game, and
so who's the pressure on now? The pressure still on?
I really believe that the Vegas, they've got the pressure on them. They've got to win.
Yeah,
they've got to win the next game.
Well, you figure the next game's back in Dallas, so that's going to be tough.
Yeah,
and so then they got now the pressure's on them to win at home. So
I don't know, boy.
Boy, that Ottinger, though, the goalie. Like we've always said during the playoffs, you can cut it down to the goaltending.
It's goaltending, and it's been that way since Dave. Whoever has the best goaltender usually wins.
So, Dad, I think the surprise, again, well, everybody knows, the surprise of the year has been the Panthers. They got in. They
just got in.
They just got in. I think Elliot Freeman said that if Pittsburgh would have beat Chicago the second last game of the season, the Panthers would have been out.
Well, they weren't ready. Pittsburgh wasn't ready.
So why? Everybody's saying why. Like, how did the Panthers knock off the Bruins, knock off the Leafs, knock off Carolina?
It's the old story again. If everybody remembers, L.A. when they snuck into the playoffs and they get a hot goal at Quick was their goaltender.
Yeah,
and you get a hot goaltender, boy. It almost makes you cry when you play such a good game and you lose.
Well, Freddie Anderson, he had goals against average less than 2, and got swept. And that's crazy. But the one thing though with the Panthers is they're big
and they're mean, and they are a mean club.
Yeah.
And tough when you play them, you play a tough club.
Yeah. The funny thing is, like we talked about it for the last two things, is why the Leafs didn't dress Wayne Simmons.
Yeah. Well,
because he could have answered that, but the funny thing is, like, Carolina couldn't answer it either.
No.
Right. When was it Reinhart really nailed that defenseman and knocked him out?
Yeah.
And Kachuk was running around, and they couldn't answer him. And the same with Boston. Boston didn't have that.
No, they didn't have that guy.
They didn't have that guy to calm him down. So it does look now like you've got to have a tough team. I was on this show, and I kept saying it doesn't mean a thing about the Bruins. I said it doesn't mean a thing, because what they're going to be known as the team that had 4 billion points and got knocked out in the first round. Right. And the thing that you and I talked about was the team that they beat was the 76 Canadians, that team that won the thing. But they had a tough team.
They really did. Let's see. They had Chatra.
Yeah.
And they had Lupien. And Robinson was
tough.
Yeah, he was a tough guy.
Remember him? He really gave it to Schultz after he
put him right to the boards.
Yeah, after he knocked out Van Boxmeer. Yeah. But they also had Bouchard, and then you look at
Bouchard. Yeah,
and then you look at Tremblay was kind of a little rat, and
they had a tough team. They really did.
Yeah, like they could take on Philly just as easy in the rough stuff. And people don't remember that. Everybody thinks they were the high-flying Frenchmen.
Well, they were the it's the strangest thing. I went against they were the high-flying Frenchmen, and then they had a tough team.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in Colorado, the guy committed and he said, this guy's good, this guy's good. And I said, well, why would we even go out and play?
Yeah, they gave you a scouting report. Great goaltending, great defense, offense, unbelievable, very tough team.
Yeah, I said, well, why do we even go out and play these guys? Yeah. Anyhow.
But it looks like now you wonder if...
I am going to keep mentioning Panthers and Vegas. They have the most Canadians.
So you wonder now if the teams now are going to start looking, saying we got to get a mean teams to go anywhere in the place.
You picked this out, Tim. I have to admit, I kept asking you all the time. And you picked it out. How about the Rangers? They got 3.
Yeah.
Three Canadians.
Out in the first round. Boston had 5 out in the first round. Average was about, the average in the guys in the playoff was about 8 to 10. So more about half. But I'm just wondering, Dad, like, are other teams now, like GM's going to look at this and say, if I want to win Stanley Cup, we got to get...
They won't.
Yeah.
They won't. They'll keep drafting the Europeans, and the Europeans must have like the guy died and gone to heaven
until the playoffs come.
Yeah, until the playoffs. But boy, when that playoffs come, I just love it. I kept saying, I said they're going to catch up. They're going to call it the same raise that they do in the regular season, and sure enough, they did up until last night. And last night, I hope they saw. Do you think they saw that the crowd was going crazy.
Yeah, it was a better game. I hope so. I just wonder if the refereeing has been so bad, and that was such an awful penalty on the Canes to lose that in overtime.
Yeah.
Or not in overtime with about 4 seconds to go. If somebody said, "All right, enough's enough."
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Let me ask you, Dad. Last night, Dallas wins. They're going back to Dallas, so you would have to think Dallas probably has a good chance of winning. Is Paul Maurice, is he glad that he has this rest, or would he, as the Panthers, like to get going again?
No, I didn't mind 2 or 3 days, but I remember one time we beat out LA in LA. We flew back and we had to play the Canadians the next night.
Yeah.
It was a gimme game. We were down 1-0 before we even got started.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking.
No, I don't like the long layoff. I hated the long layoff. You got a nice rhythm going. You got to get the goalies hot. Everybody's going. Yeah, 3 days is enough.
Yeah, then you got to get going because you never know. Like Bosky, he's in another planet right now.
Yeah,
and you wonder 3 days off. Could it mess with him?
Well, 6 days off. I think it ended up at about 6 days off, and he could get out of that rhythm. He could get a million things could happen. Yeah. I just like it about 3 days, and then let's get right back at it again and get it over with.
Yeah, I was just looking at so Florida's beat Toronto, and they're in the finals. For the last 5 years, the team that has beat the Leafs has gone on to the finals.
Yeah. I said this about 2 shows ago. That's what happens when you get a hot goaltender against you. If you get a hot goaltender against you, you can't do nothing.
Yeah. And everybody says, "Oh, you got to watch the penalties." The Panthers in Vegas are the 2 of the 3 top most penalized teams in the playoffs.
You're throwing this stuff at me like this.
Yeah, well, it goes against of everything that you talk about, that you can't play rough, that you can't hit, and you got to be careful. And these guys, I mean,
Rangers got 3 Canadians.
Right.
Can I say more than that?
Dad, Cindy's taking a vacation day, so she's off. In case you wonder where Cindy is. And we'd like to thank our sponsor, Spreads.ca. They're a Canadian-owned online casino and sportsbook. And if you sign up now and use the promo GRAPES, they'll match your deposit up to $500. You get 10 spins on the big wheel for some big dough. And your first sports bet, they'll spot you $25. But, Dad, I got to ask you a question outside of hockey. You're a big Blue Jay fan.
Oh, I thought they were going to win the other day.
They are in the slump of slumps.
I can't. When I watch these guys, they seem as if they want to win, and they're not going through the motions. That Vlad, he's laughing after the game and everything. I just don't understand it. I just
as you say, they're in the slump of slumps. Like when the Bruins, you guys went on a big. It was almost a month. I think you won. We won 2 games. What do you do if you're the coach or the manager of the Jays and just?
He was mad the other day. Jameson was mad the other day.
Well, I think he should. That's the thing I don't get with the Blue Jays managers the last 3 years. They don't seem to be upset when they lose a game.
Yeah. I wish I could tell you, Tim, but I'm a Blue Jay fan. I'm one of those guys that watch the ball games right to the very end. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, they're in last place. They are playing. They are in a tough part of the schedule right now.
Well, listen, they are going to come through the last half. It seems as if they're playing a contender every game.
No, every night.
Gee. And the last half of the season, they have a pretty good...
an easier schedule.
Easier schedule, that's it. And they're going to come through, and they better come through because I watch those guys all the time.
Okay, Dad, so... we're going to take some questions from the social media on your Twitter and Facebook accounts. So we're going to ask some questions. So, Dad, we got from Facebook, Don Watson. He wants to know who was the nicest player ever to play in the NHL.
Well, that's easy.
He said you can't say Bobby Orr.
I can't say Bobby Orr on that one because what do you have?
He had over 100 penalty minutes, but he's a pretty intense guy.
Oh, yeah, he wasn't a nice guy at all.
He still is.
The nicest guy I ever run into, well, I'd have to say one of the nicest guys. Well, I'd say the nicest guy I ever run into is Jean Rattel. And he was like a priest.
Yeah.
And in fact, I remember the time he come in and he closed the door. Holy Dinah, this is like my little office. And he closed the door, and I said, "Oh boy, he's quitting or something." He says, and that was when we had the girls coming in, and the guys that didn't have any clothes on.
Oh, the reporters.
He says, "My wife won't put up with that." And Nancy, I think her name was. Yeah, it was her name, and she says, "I will not put up with that."
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, everybody thinks of your Bruins of how tough they were, and when you do, you have Stan and Terry and John Wensink and Mike and everybody. Cash, and John Rattel won the Lady Byng.
Yeah, he come in. I'm sorry, Donnie, and I'm thinking, what the heck is this guy sorry for? He won the Lady Byng. I think John Busick won the Lady Byng.
Yeah, and then Ricky Middleton later on, I think, won it.
Yeah, I went from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, I don't think I was around the dressing room a lot, and I don't think I heard Mr. Rattel swear once.
No, he would never swear.
No. Remember, you used to let him go sit up in first class.
Oh yeah. I remember I
like you used to fly commercial.
First year was well, we used to charter once in a while.
Yeah,
we had to get out, and I'd sit up there and I knew they
they'd give you wine and
wine and stuff like that, and the guys used to be back. So one day I went up and I said I said to Jean, Jean, I want you to go first class. You sit in my seat. And he said, "Oh no, Donnie, I can't do that. I cannot do that." And I said, "No, I have to talk to Schmatzy about something." He was sitting beside Bobby Schmatz, and he said, "Okay." So he went up and said, to hurry this through. And about 3 trips, and he come up and he says, "Donnie, are you going to sit first class?" He was a great guy. He really is a great guy.
Yeah, he took me take a golf lesson one time. Took me out to a golfing range and gave me some golf lessons.
He was a first class golf guy.
Yeah, because he was like that, thin and tall, and
he looks like a golfer.
He gave me a sandwich. I still have his sandwich he gave me.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So
tell
that story again. We've told it before, but a lot of people laugh. There was a face-off just outside. So it's a face-off just outside.
No, it's just inside the blue line.
Just inside the blue line.
Blue line, and it was right by our bench. And I come up with a great idea. It was the left-hand draw, and he was going to pull back and try to get to the defenseman. And I told John, he was a left-hand draw too, said instead of pulling it back in our end, to shoot it down at the other end. It was about, I would say, about 19 seconds left or something like that. So I called him over, and I'm all excited and everything like a fool. And he's standing there, and he looks like a warrior. He's got blood running down. He's got a little nick in the eye, and his blood's running down with the sweat. And I said, "John, when you do this, when you get it, pull it. Don't pull it back. Go shoot it down the ice." And he says, "Yeah, Donnie, I have that figured out." And the players just killed it. And because I went down in the front row, I was in the back. I was so excited. And he says, "Yeah, Donnie, I have that figured out." Yeah. And the players just killed themselves, and nobody could understand why the players were killing themselves. Yeah. I was dumbfounded.
I think one story I remember about John Rattel was the word was out, if you touch John Rattel, you're dead, right? That was the word.
Well, the word was, I don't know how the word got out, but it got out.
So I remember it was about 3 games left in the season, and we're in New York. Rangers or Islanders.
Islanders, yeah.
And I think was it Gary Howitt or somebody.
Jerry Howard, yeah, he had fuzzy hair.
Yeah, so he took and he really nailed John Rattel.
Yeah, in the back, cross-checked him in the back. Yeah,
and it was the score was tied 2-2. It was probably just beginning of the third period, and he cross-checked John Rattel.
This is for first spot we were going for,
right? And John Wensink grabbed him.
And just wrapped his head.
Right. And so now we got a penalty. They didn't give a penalty on hitting Rattel, but they gave it to John.
And the other guys were mad.
Right.
Yeah, John for getting a penalty with
Yeah,
2 minutes to go.
What are you doing? So they were all, but you kind of rallied the troops.
All right, come on, God, that's it. Nobody hits our John Rattel, and I'm going, I'm going like an idiot, and the guys. I said, I called Donnie Marcotte over. I said, Donnie, if you ever kill a penalty, kill this one.
And then we did, and it was 2-2, and with about 2 minutes to go, guess who got the winner?
Yeah, and it was 2-2, and I can still see him backhand. He had a slate curved stick. By the way, I asked him to have a, he loved a straight stick because he could get in face-offs. He was great in face-offs. I said, John, do you ever have a slate curve? So I ordered a dozen slate curved sticks, just for him. Yeah. And he loved them. I tell you, he just loved them.
But I remember that goal. You're right. It was Billy Smith, and went right over his glove. It was a backhand.
Oh, I didn't know that. All I remember was the goal, and I remember the backhand. And you don't see too many backhands now.
Well, and we went on to win the first place.
Yeah, I was a nervous wreck after those games, I'll tell you that. John Rattel was one of the nicest guys I ever met anywhere, never mind in hockey, anywhere.